a video for. So I want to kind of bring us back up to speed. We had begun a discussion of qualitative data, and we're kind of walking through the statistical process. And if you'll recall, the first step in the statistical research process is to state your question clearly and with as much detail as possible. Again, you want to think about the who, the where, the what, the when, and you probably have in the back of your mind the how and the why. Because if you're going to be writing a report, writing an article to be published, you want to include all of that information. So the question that we were considering on Monday is, what is the most popular vehicle manufacturer driven by GHC students in fall 2022? You want to state the question clearly and with as much detail as possible so that you can do step 2, which is to identify the variable, the population, the parameter, the sample, and the statistic. And we did that on Monday. I'm just kind of trying to review a little bit. We said the variable, the information that we wanted to collect, was the vehicle manufacturer. And you would respond with things like Kia, Ford, Toyota, and so forth. We determined that that was qualitative data and is at the nominal level. The implied population based on the phrasing of the question is all 4,683 GHC students in fall 2022. Because the question says driven by GHC students. And I had looked up how many were enrolled for this semester. The parameter was or is the most popular vehicle manufacturer for all 4,683 GHC students in fall 2022. Remember, the parameter is the measurement of the variable related to the population. Okay, I'm trying to help you make sure you make that connection. The parameter is the measurement of the variable related to the population. The sample was the 23 GHC students in STAT 1401 CRN 80033 in fall 2022 and present on Monday, August the 29th. We did decide that that was a convenient sample because you are a captive audience within the classroom, but yet it has the sense of randomness because any student enrolled at Georgia Highlands could or had the opportunity to register for the class. It is representative because our population is students at GHC in fall 2022. You all in the classroom are GHC students in fall 2022. I did indicate to you that that is what we term a small sample, and that a small sample is anything, any size less than 30. Our statistic is the most popular vehicle manufacturer for the 23 students in STAT 1401 CRN 80033 in fall 2022 and present on 8/29/22. Again, the statistic is the measurement of the variable for the sample. And it's the same measurement that we use for the parameter. The difference is the statistic is connected or related to the sample. Okay, we then went to step 3. In step 3, we went around the room for those that were present, and we collected the data. Okay. And as you responded, I just wrote down your response. I kind of went down the column and then I went across the rows, and we noted that we had a sample size, which is represented by lowercase n. Sample is the little n, was 23. Just as a side note, I mentioned to you that the population size is usually represented by a capital or a big N. And we collected what is termed the raw data. There's no sense of order to the data. And with 23, we might be able to make some determinations just by scanning the list. But we talked about, what if we had 230 or 2,300 or 23,000? That would be difficult to do. So we have to have a way to organize our data. And the two tools that we use to organize the data are tables and graphs. In statistics, they use fancy dancy words sometimes, and they refer to the table as a frequency distribution instead of just calling it a table. For qualitative data, we create what are called categorical frequency distributions. And for quantitative data, we create grouped frequency distributions. The graphs that we will consider for qualitative are a bar chart and a pie graph. And for quantitative, we will ultimately do stem and leaf, histogram, and a box plot. Our focus on Monday and our continued focus today is on qualitative data. And we had begun to create a categorical frequency distribution. We were not able to finish it, so that's where we're going to pick up. So I kind of got us back up to speed. We had started creating a categorical frequency distribution. And I had mentioned to you that typically a categorical frequency distribution has at least 3 columns, and sometimes it will have 4 columns. The one that we were working on, I had 4 columns. The first column of any categorical frequency distribution is typically going to be your categories. And those categories are in A, B, C order. Again, to make it easy, now that we've come back, it's 2 days later. And if I happen to be looking to see, did anybody drive a Chevrolet, I know that Chevrolet is going to be near the top of the list because it starts with the letter C. If I want to determine if somebody drove a Toyota, I would look near the bottom of the list because Toyota starts with the letter T, which is near the end of the alphabet. So typically your categories are in ABC order. Now, in some cases, for example, if we were looking at birth months, okay, there's kind of a specified order. Normally with months, we would think January, February, March, April, May, and so forth. So they would not necessarily be alphabetical, but they're kind of in the standard accepted order of the way that they fall within the year. So our first column is our categories. The second column is the column that is optional. And what we did is we took our data and we went through the list, and each time that particular category occurred, we put a tick mark. Again, with a list of 23, you might not need that column. But again, if you had 230 or larger sample size, you might. The third column is the frequency column. Frequency is usually abbreviated with a lowercase f. Hopefully that makes sense since frequency starts with the letter F. And it's a number. So I just determined, like, using my tick marks, I can see that we had 2 who drove a Chevrolet, 1 Chrysler, 5 Ford, 2 Honda, 2 Kia, 1 Mazda, 1 Mitsubishi, 1 Nissan, 1 Subaru, 6 Toyota, and 1 Volkswagen. I didn't mention it, but I am going to at this particular juncture that the sample, your frequency should always equal the sample size. The sample size should always equal the total frequency. And we kind of use that as a checkpoint because we totaled up those frequencies and found that it did total to 23. And that gave us an assurance that we had used all the data. We hadn't left anything out. And that's where we had to stop. We didn't get to talk about in full detail how to calculate or determine the relative frequency. So that's where I'm going to pick up this afternoon. Relative frequency can be written either as a decimal, a fraction, or a percentage. I tend to write it as a percentage because that's how I learned it. I looked earlier today during the earlier class, and one of the questions in your homework has it written as a decimal. It's okay. Different researchers may want it in different formats. It is a formula. The formula that we use to calculate the relative frequency is the frequency divided by the total number in the sample times 100%. The purpose of relative frequency is that it allows us to compare different data sets even if they're different sizes. For example, my class that meets at 9:30, we had 21 students present on Monday. For this class, we had 23 students. That's 2 different sized groups. So we can't compare them apples to apples because they're different sizes. I got an apple and an orange. But if I look at the relative frequency, which takes the size of the group into consideration, then I'm able to make those comparisons. So that's the primary purpose of relative frequency. So I'm going to show you how to calculate these. This is one of those cases where you do want to have a handheld calculator. And this is a little bit of a review of some of the algebra content that you'll find in the algebra review. So as a fraction for Chevrolet, I would have 2 over 23. I convert that to a decimal by dividing. So I would type into my calculator 2 divide 23, and we're going to round to 4 places. So we have 0.08. Excuse me, 0.08. Okay, here's where it gets tricky. Let me get a piece of paper. Okay, so we got 0.08695. I want to round to 4 places. The number in the 4th place is the 9. Next door is the 5. The 5 is going to cause it to bump up. But because that's a 9, the 9 bumps the number back in front of it. So that this actually becomes 0.870 if we round to 4 places. Okay, we're using standard rounding rules. Okay, 5 or higher, you round up. 4 or less, you leave it alone. If it happens to be a 9, as it was in this case, you have to kind of do a little extra bump there. Okay, everybody good? Now, to get from that decimal to a percentage, we multiply by 100. So I would have, again, 8.70%. Guys, for percentages, you have to have the percent symbol because that's what lets me know that it's a percentage. If you don't put that little, curly Q symbol out there, I don't realize it or recognize it as a percentage, and it makes a difference. Okay, then we have Chrysler. We had 1 out of 23. So we do 1 divide 23. We get 0.0435 because there's a 7 next to the 4. Multiplied by 100 is 4.35%. Then we have Ford was 5. So I've got 5 out of 23. So 5 divide 23 is 0.2174 because the 9 bumps the 3 times 100 would give me 21.74%. For Honda, I had 2. So I have 2 out of 23, which we already determined to be 0.0870 or 8.70%. We also had 2 for Kia, 0.0870 or 8.70%. For Mazda, Mitsubishi, Nissan, and Subaru, we had 1, which again, we've kind of already figured out is 0.0435 or 4.35%. I mean, if you want to keep doing the calculations in the calculator, you can, but I've already figured it, so I kind of already know that answer. I'm just filling in the table. I'm a little bit off because I don't have lines. Sorry about that. And I write too big. All right, then I'm down to Toyota. And for Toyota, we had 6. Okay, so I've got 6 out of 23. So 6 divide 23 is 0.2609 when you round it. Multiplied by 100 is 26.09%. And then my VW or my Volkswagen that I almost missed was 1 out of 23. Okay, so that gives you the full categorical frequency distribution. Now, as a side note, this relative frequency should total to 1 or 100%. If you use the decimals, it should total to 1. If you use the percentages, it should total to 100%. And so I'm going to check myself. Okay, I have 8.7 plus 4.35 plus 21.74 plus 8.7 plus 8.7 plus 4.35 plus 4.35 plus 4.35 plus 4.35 plus 26.09 plus 4.35. Now I get 100.03. I'm a little bit above 100%. It's okay. because we've rounded. Remember, we rounded some of our decimals. So we're going to be slightly above 100%, but I'm good, which again gives me a safety net to know that hopefully I didn't make a calculation error and I've included all of the data. Okay, so questions about a categorical frequency distribution. Okay, I want to show you something on the homework related to this topic, and then we're going to come back and talk about graphs. Because of the way the questions are set up, sometimes students get really confused about what they're trying to do. So I want to try to clear up that misunderstanding before, I turn you completely loose on your own and I wind up getting thousands of emails because you don't know how to do it. Okay. So let me go over. I'm in the lesson Qualitative Data Homework. It's the last lesson for module 1, and it's the homework. As far as the tables and graphs, you're going to be asked to answer questions related to a bar graph and answer questions related to a pie chart. You're not going to be asked to create one, but you're going to be asked to read and or interpret one. But then we get to scenario number 5, and this is the question that I want to address. There's actually a scenario 5 and a scenario 6, but this is the format that I want to address. It says 20 patrons were asked to respond to a survey question about the reason for visiting a local library. And then they give you the data set. So they give you here in this question the raw data. And then they've formatted a frequency distribution. It's got a couple of issues. I did not actually write this question. So I'm going to kind of rough sketch that frequency distribution onto my paper. Okay, so the first column gives us the reason why the person was going to the library. The second column gives us the frequency. And the third column is really the relative frequency. There's a typo there. Again, I didn't type this one, so. There are 3 primary reasons that they had listed about why a person was going to the library: to check out books, to meet someone, or to study. And then they also give you an extra row to total. Now, I'm going to ignore the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H thing for just a minute, because what we need to do is use this raw data that I have highlighted in blue, and we're going to kind of make our own frequency distribution. Now I'm going to go back over to my paper so you can see me do that. Okay, so I kind of copied that format. I have my reasons, my frequency column, and my relative frequency column. So I'm going to look at, I'm going to look at it and write it down. But as I go through this list, I'm going to write down a tick mark each time that one occurs. So we have study, meet someone, check out books, study. Top of the second column, meet someone, study, check out books, study, check out books. Top of the third column, check out books, meet someone, study, check out books. Fourth column, meet someone, check out books, study, meet someone, check out books. Okay, so that I've got tally marks, but I'm going to go back and put in my frequencies. So there are 7 people who went to the library to check out a book, 5 who went to meet someone, and 8 who went there to study. And we were told we surveyed 20 people. So I hope that totals to 20. 7 plus 5 is 12 plus 8 is 20. So it does total to the sample size of 20. Then I can calculate the relative frequency. And again, I noticed if you look at the question and scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there are some answers in decimal form and there are not any in percent form. So I kind of know that I'm using decimals for my relative frequency. So I would have 7 divided by 20, which is 0.35. 5 divided by 20. If you simplify the fraction, that's 1/4 or 0.25. 8 over 20 would simplify to 4/5, which is, not 4/5, I'm sorry, 2/5. Sorry, 2/5 or 40%. If we total those decimals do total to 1. So again, I know that I'm correct. Okay, so I've created, just by using the raw data, I've created a frequency distribution, a categorical frequency distribution for this raw data. Okay, what has happened is the way that it's formatted is they're telling you that whatever is in this box corresponds to A, this box corresponds to B, this one corresponds to C, D, E, F, G, and H. And they refer to those letters when they're looking at the questions. Okay, so again, what they've done is whatever's in the box corresponds to A. Whatever's in the box corresponds to B. Whatever's in the box corresponds to C, and so forth. The question is set up as matching. The questions are on the left. Your options or choices are on the right. So this one says, what is the total of the relative frequencies? And then it has an H. So it's telling you that answer is in the box where the H is located. And that was 1. So I click on the drop down menu. The answer of 1 is choice number 8. So I put 8. What is the frequency of the second class? Okay, it tells you that's C. And if you could see the distribution, you would see that was 5. And 5 is option 2. So on my drop-down menu, I choose number 2. What is the relative frequency of the third class, which corresponds to letter F? Now F is 40%, so it's number 7. Okay, number 7. But you get the idea? Okay, so hopefully that little explanation will help head off any issues you may have with scenario 5, or they do a similar thing with scenario 6. Okay, it will make your life easier if you will create the frequency distribution yourself before you start trying to answer the questions. Okay, so let's go back now and talk about, after we get our frequency distribution, remember our ultimate goal is to answer the question. And remember, our question was, what is the most popular vehicle manufacturer driven by GHC students in fall 2022? With as simple a tool as organizing that data into a categorical frequency distribution, into a table. I should be able to answer that question. I should be able to tell you, because the one with the highest frequency, which happened to be Toyota, would be my answer. So the most popular vehicle would have been Toyota, because it has the highest frequency or relative frequency. I could also tell you that the next one would be Ford. And then I have a tie between Chevrolet, Honda, Kia, because each of those occurred 2 times. It's okay to have a tie. And in terms of the bottom of the list, I have Chrysler, Mazda, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Subaru, and VW, Volkswagen. It's okay to have a tie. Okay, but even with the simple tool of the table, we have enough information to answer the question, which is our ultimate goal. But sometimes the table, it's a little cumbersome. It's a lot of information, especially if you put in all the calculations and stuff like I did. Okay, so sometimes, especially depending on what you're trying to do, it may be better to present your data in a graphical form. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Pictures can communicate more information quicker than words. And so we can use our categorical frequency distribution as our springboard for those graphs. And there are 2 that we're going to talk about primarily in this course related to qualitative data. So the first type of graph that we're going to talk about is a bar graph or bar chart. Minitab calls it a bar chart. Okay, probably maybe in elementary school or middle school, even high school, they probably called it a bar graph. A bar graph displays the frequency most of the time. It could do relative frequency, but most of the time it's frequency. Displays the frequency of each category as a bar on the graph. Now that bar can be vertical or horizontal, just kind of depends on maybe your preference. Okay, so the bars can be either vertical or horizontal. Most times in today's world, with the technologies that we have, computers, even some calculators now will do it, but we have technologies that will create the graphs for us and make them look a lot more professional, a lot more pretty, if you will, than ones that we could draw by hand. I mean, to be real meticulous, we'd have to get us a nice little ruler out, and make and do the tick marks. So we have the technologies that will do it for us. I want to rough sketch one here of our data so that you can see, and we can talk about some of the characteristics. So when you have a bar graph, you have a vertical axis, and typically on that vertical axis, you're going to have the frequency. Minitab refers to that as the count, just so you'll know. On the horizontal, again, you would have your categories. And for the example that we're looking at, for us, that would be the vehicle manufacturers. Typically, again, in just a general, generic type bar graph, the categories on that horizontal axis are going to be alphabetical. So we would have Chevrolet, Chrysler, Ford, Honda, Kia, Mazda, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Subaru, Toyota, and the Volkswagen. Now, I abbreviated, okay, but they normally would write the words out. If you were doing it by hand, you would have to pick the scale on the vertical. You have to encompass the lowest frequency and the highest frequency. So we go from a low of 1 to a high of 6. So I'm just going to count to 6. Okay, and I can do it that way. And then the height of the bar is going to represent the frequency. So for Chrysler, or excuse me, for Chevrolet, we had 2. For Chrysler, we had 1. Ford, we had 5. Whoops. Honda, we had 2. Kia, we had 2. Mazda was 1. Mitsubishi was 1. Nissan was 1. Subaru was 1. Toyota was 6. And Volkswagen was 1. The other key piece for a bar graph or any kind of graph, whether it's a bar graph, a pie chart, the histogram, the stem and leaf, or the box plot that we're going to be talking about later on, you need to have a title, and your title should be detailed. Okay, sort of like the question, who, where, what, when, that kind of thing. So I might title this Most Popular Vehicle, and I'm running out of space, manufacturer. And I may say like GHC students in fall 2022. Again, someone who has no idea what we've been talking about, if they were to walk into this room, okay, they should be able to look at that graph and know exactly what it's about. So you need your title to have enough details so that they can do that. The other piece that's important here that I want to point out to you, notice how there are gaps between each of the bars. That's important. That's partly what makes it a bar graph. But the bars also serve a purpose. Sorry. The gaps also serve a purpose. Gaps help us to see that each category is a standalone. It is its own category. And you don't drive a Chevy Ford or a Ford Chevy. such a vehicle doesn't exist. Okay, so you have just a Chevy, it's a standalone bar, just a Chrysler, just a Ford. Okay, so the gaps here are important because they indicate that your categories are what we would term standalone. Now, again, in terms of your homework, in terms of the test, you are going to be asked to interpret or read a graph. For example, if I had given you this graph, I might ask you, how many Fords were driven by the students that were surveyed. I could say, what's the most popular? I could even ask you the least popular. You would have to give me 6 different answers: Chrysler, Mazda, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Subaru, and Volkswagen. 6 different answers, but that would be the answer. It's okay to have a tie, if you will. Again, I hope that's a skill that you're already familiar with. Okay, something that you've learned previously in other courses or throughout your educational career through the elementary and middle school and high school. To show you in Minitab in a few minutes how to create one of these, just so you can see how much prettier it looks than Miss Ralston's by hand. The other category of graph that we're going to focus on in this course is a graph. Minitab calls it a pie chart. You may have also heard this particular one called a circle graph. Oh, you're being fuzzy, aren't you? A pie graph usually displays the relative frequency of each category. And I'm sorry, it's blurry. Doesn't like me moving my hand. As a slice of the circle or the pie. Okay, so a circle graph, pie chart, whatever you call it, usually displays the relative frequency of each category as kind of a slice of the pie, like a slice of the pie, slice of the pizza, slice of the circle. Now, way back when in the day, when people had to create these by hand, gosh, this was a lot of work. Because when you try to create a pie chart or pie graph, you have to remember that there are 360 degrees in a circle. You'd have to figure out, well, okay, what is, 8.7% of 360 degrees? It's going to give you an angle, and then you got to get the protractor out to measure. I mean, it was awful. I've been there, done that, by the way. Okay, it's awful. So we definitely do not want to create circle graphs, pie charts, whatever, by hand. We would use a technology to do it. Again, I'm going to try to rough sketch one here. Okay, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that had like 4.3%, 4.35%. So I'm just going to kind of make it up myself. Okay, and then we had 3 that had 8.7. You had 1 with 21 and 1 with 26, and I'm certainly way off. Okay, but again, you hopefully you get the idea. And then we would label them. So we would have like Chevy, Chrysler, Honda, oh, Honda was two, sorry, Mazda. We would have our big one as Toyota, which I'm way off, by the way. And a lot of times, too, we would also include the percentage because honestly, I don't know that I could look at a circle or a circle graph and recognize, well, oh, that's 26.09%. So you're going to label the slices. Again, mine is messy. It is by no means to scale. Again, the technology is going to do it for us. But the other important piece here, just like I said before, you still got to have a title that's detailed, okay? So that if somebody walks in, they know what this thing is about. I wouldn't really want them looking at this one, but so again, we could say most popular vehicle manufacturer, and it is GHC students in fall 2022. Now, the other thing that a pie graph does is it does let you see the relationship between the categories and how it relates to the whole. Okay, the other thing about a pie graph or a circle graph is that it lets you see how one category relates to the others or how it relates to the whole. Now, again, on the test and in your homeworks, the expectation is that you're able to look at a pie graph that is given to you, already set up, already drawn, and you're able to interpret it. That is the expectation. I am going to show you how to create one using Minitab, but again, you're not asked to do that. Questions? All right, I do want to, because we're at a point where we need to begin thinking about using some of the technology, using Minitab. So I do want to go out and talk a little bit about Minitab and show you some things. Okay, so that we're ready to go headstrong into it next week when we get into quantitative data. Especially with quantitative data, it's a whole lot easier to use the technology than it is to try to do stuff by hand. Okay, so I want to be able to do that. I'm looking for my data. Okay, so I'm going into the course. First of all, you now have access to Minitab. It is free to you on the classroom computer in front of you, but also you have the ability to download it to your personal device, whether that's a laptop, a tablet. I think it would even work on a phone. I've never tried it on a phone. Now, the instructions for downloading it, if you're in the course and go over to the right-hand side to the content under Start Here. And there's a folder labeled Minitab Online. And if you'll select that folder under Start Here, this gives you the instructions on how to set up your account. Google Chrome is the recommended browser. And that doesn't mean you can't use something else. It's just that Minitab tends to work best using Google Chrome. I did have a comment there that you shouldn't register until at least Wednesday, August 24th. We are beyond August 24th, so you are good. And it walks you through the steps. It has screenshots or pictures to kind of show you what you should be seeing on your screen. Two important things. One, you have to use your Georgia Highlands College email address. Okay, you have to use your Georgia Highlands College email address. That's how we verify that you are a student and you have access to it for free. Secondly, when you get down to the end, you've got your account created, you're ready to log in. It says, welcome to Minitab. And it gives you two options. It gives you the option for a desktop app or a web app. We are using the web app. The web app will work on any device, whether it is a Windows-based device or is an Apple device. Okay, we are using the web app. So make sure you choose open the web app. Okay, it's not difficult to do. In the classroom, it's on the computer in front of you. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to access it. Okay, if you'll go to Google Chrome, okay, make sure you get signed in. Okay, in the search bar, you're going to type app, A-P-P, dot, Minitab, MINITAB.com. App, A-P-P, dot, Minitab.com. It should ask you for your Georgia Highlands email address. It even asked me. So I'm going to type in my Georgia Highlands email address. It asks you for your password. Guys, it's the same password that you use to log onto the computer, that you use to log into D2L. So you type that in. It even has the Duo security. Okay, once you get Minitab opened, you should see kind of a three split screen. Down the left-hand side, vertically, you have kind of this white space. It's called the Navigator. This is where, sort of like if you create a bar graph and then you create a pie chart and then you do something else, it gives you a list of all the things that you created and allows you to toggle or go between those things, go back to them. Okay. We don't use that particular piece very much, but it's there in case I want to go back to something. Then on the right-hand side, you have two screens or a split screen. In the top half, which is basically white with the Minitab logo in the center, that is like your workspace. That's like your clean piece of paper where you're going to take notes. This is where your results are going to appear. When we tell Minitab to do something, that is where your results are going to appear. The bottom half on the right looks very similar to a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. Okay. Couple of differences. The columns in Minitab are labeled using the letter C, C for column. They label them column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Whereas Excel uses A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so Minitab labels them using the letter C. They're labeled across the top. The columns are labeled across the top and they're numbered. The rows of the spreadsheet are also numbered down the left-hand side. So I have row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. One of the nice things that I like about Minitab is this little extra space right here between where it says C1 and before I start typing in my data, it has this little grayed out box. That little grayed out box is where you would put the title. What data are you putting in that column? You should never enter a column of information without indicating what it is. So we've been focusing this morning or this afternoon on vehicle manufacturer. Okay, so I can type vehicle manufacturer. If you have a cloud location and you want to save stuff to either your OneDrive or your Google Drive, you may do so. I usually don't because I'm here in the classroom. I can, if I had ages and they were in years, or if I had height and it was in inches, or if I had eye color. Okay, you can have multiple columns, and that's one reason why it's important to label them. It's because if I do this spreadsheet today and enter all this data, and I don't use it for a few days, when I come back, I need to remember or know what's in that column. Okay, so it's important that you label the column so that you know what data is in there. And again, it's nice because you have this extra little grayed out area to do that. And then there are several ways to get the data. One is you have to manually type it in. 2, we can copy and paste from Excel. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet that maybe is given to you or already set up, we can use copy and paste. Minitab has its own prefix, okay, and I'm going to go back over here where I can write it down. Minitab has its own prefix where you might see a file that has a prefix .mpx, I'm sorry, it's not a prefix, it's a suffix, or .mtx, okay, and those files, if we happen to have one of those, can be directly uploaded into Minitab. And I have videos for that. I haven't got them posted into the course yet, but I'm going to demonstrate. I'll demonstrate that for you, but I also have videos that you can go back to. Okay, I also have detailed instructions on how to do the different things in Minitab, and I'm going to get those pulled into the course later this afternoon. So if I were thinking about, again, what we've been talking about today with the vehicle manufacturer, and I have that list of 23 values, I would simply type it in. Now, as far as typing it in, again, it doesn't matter, you know, the order in which I type them. I could have typed them into Minitab as you guys were stating them the other day. I'm going back through the list. I'm going down the columns as I'm typing. I could go across the rows. It doesn't matter, okay? Myrna may type it in one way. Donnie may type it in another. It's okay. In the end, the deal is you want to make sure that you have all 23 values, typed in. I will tell you, though, that Minitab is very case specific. So for example, all of these that I'm typing in with a capital letter. If you happen to misspell one of them, then Minitab views that as 2 different options. If you use a lowercase, like if I typed Toyota with a lowercase for one of the options, again, Minitab views that as a separate value. So it is important that you type everything incorrectly. Like when I'm typing these, like I typed forward, I don't space, and then I hit enter. If I had done forward space and then entered, you have to be consistent. Okay. Otherwise, Minitab will read it as two different values. So I get everything typed in. I can tell the last one I typed was at row 23, which thankfully means I typed in 23 values. I may want to scan back through my list to make sure maybe, to catch anything. Did I not capitalize one? Did I maybe have a misspelling? You may want to scan back through, run back through the list. Okay, so I have my data in. Notice we entered it into a column. We put it in a column. Okay, you don't put data in rows. Data goes in columns. All right. Another similarity to, say, Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel or even PowerPoint is your menu bar. Your menu bar is across the top. So we have File, Edit, Data, Calc, Stat, Graph, View, Help, and so forth. Okay. If you click on these, you get a drop-down menu, just like you would if you were in Word or Excel. Minitab, in my opinion, is one of the more user-friendly statistical software packages. One is because it does work similar to Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. Guys, when I learned Minitab, it was what we call DOS-based, and I had to literally remember and type in the commands and remember how to type in everything. So this is so much nicer and so much easier. It is also reasonably intuitive if you use, not to be ugly, a little bit of common sense. Okay. For example, if we wanted, because I wanted to show you how to create the nice bar graph and the nice circle graph, and how much prettier it looks than Miss Ralston's. Okay. Well, it's a graph. So guys, think about what menu I might want to choose across the top. It's a graph. So I'm going to choose graph. And when I choose graph, graph gives me a drop-down list of all the different graphs that Minitab will create. Now I do have to scroll down. And when I get near the bottom of the list, I see bar chart, which is what I want. So I'm going to choose bar chart. Now it gives me a couple of options here because it does give me the option. If I had it typed in, I can use my table. But I didn't type my table in. I used the raw data, which honestly is better. So we're going to do counts of unique values. I have the raw data. I don't have it summarized in any way. So I need counts of unique values. We only deal with one variable at a time. I click OK. And then it asks me, where's the variable? Just like the old Wendy's commercial used to say, where's the beef? Okay, where's the variable? Now, notice it even says, guys, categorical variable. Minitab knows for a bar chart, you're using qualitative data or categories. And right now, I only have one column of data, so I only got one option. Okay. The easiest way to do it is hover your mouse over the column you want and double click. Doo-doo. And it pops it right in there. I can use options. I just usually order the bars by default, but I do like to add the data labels, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So I tell it OK. And then I tell it OK. And Minitab very easily, very quickly gives me a beautiful bar chart. It has my categories written out in words instead of the abbreviations I had. It does use count on the vertical scale instead of frequency, but that's okay. The one thing that Minitab doesn't do well is it doesn't give you a nice title. It just tells you, this is a chart of the vehicle manufacturer. Well, remember, I got 2 minutes. Remember that you want that title to be detailed. Okay, if you'll click on the chart anywhere you want to, notice how it gets dark around it. And then you see this little upside down triangle in the right-hand corner, upper right-hand corner. If I click on that, I can use that to copy it if I need to copy it into Word or into a PowerPoint. But if I go to Graph Options, lo and behold, it lets me change the title. So I could change it to Most Popular Vehicle Manufacturer. And I could even put in a subtitle so that I can indicate that it's GHC students in fall 2022. Then if you just close that window, it automatically changes your title. The data labels that I clicked, remember I clicked the little box that said data labels? What it does is it put these numbers in here above each bar so that I don't have to guess. I know I can look at it real easily and see, okay, we had 5 Ford, 2 Honda, 2 Kia. All right, I know I'm running a little bit behind. Remember, you have your 6 homeworks from Module 1 are due on Sundays. The Module 1 exam opens at midnight tomorrow, Thursday, September 1st at midnight, and will close on Monday, the 5th at 11:30 p.m. You have those things to complete. Okay. Monday is a holiday. It is Labor Day. We do not have class. So I will not see your lovely faces again until next Wednesday. And we will begin Module 2. We will start with quantitative data. Okay. I'll see you then. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I just have one last question. So for your